update y'all from Fort Myers Technical College.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. At this time, we'd be happy to take public comment from any non-DAC members on agenda items on this evening's agenda, which primarily consists of our capital projects update. Do we have any non-DAC members that would like to comment on our agenda tonight? Seeing that, we'll move to the wonderful Miss Mary Fisher for a board update. Our chairperson too, I believe, right? Our board chair and liaison?
Yes, thank you. And new substitute teacher. So I had an opportunity to substitute in a 7th grade social studies class, 2 world history, 1 American history, and 2 civics groups. And I was so grateful that it wasn't math because I would have been in big trouble. Anyway, it gave me a renewed appreciation for all of the teachers who stay in the classroom with kids all day long and don't even get to go to the bathroom. So it really brought it back to me and made me more appreciative than ever of the work that our teachers do. So we have 2 schools in progress. The Gateway High School MMM ground is broken and walls are going up. The new middle school MM is approved, and the planning is progressing really nicely as we continue to grow daily. Last night at the board, we approved and authorized our school board attorney to withdraw us from the School Board of Alachua County versus Richard Corcoran, Leon County Circuit Court case. It's a secondary case to the House Bill 7068 lawsuit that we're involved in. And that is where we are asking the state to change their wording in that, because it takes away local control, takes away our ability to use Title I money, and it also takes money from public schools and funnels it into charter schools for building. So it really hurts us with our funding. So we are opting to stay into that with 9 other districts. We also approved our educational facilities plan for 2020 through 2039, a whole 20 years. And so it's really exciting, and it's going to be amazing to see the changes that take place annually as we go on. So I don't know if I'll be here to see it, but I'm going to try. And I think that we're going to see a lot more different types of education out of the brick and mortar, and a lot more of use of internet and technology. So it's really an exciting time. Board members and district staff, in addition to me, including Dr. Adkins, who has now put in his bid to be a permanent sub in 2nd grade at least once a month, because he enjoyed that experience with younger kids, as his prior experience had been only at middle and high school. So we participated in send-off and subbing and the walk-ins, and want to support our teachers as they lobby for funding for the future. And we continue to advocate for students and staff and work to partner with our families and our local business community. And I think that's all I have, and I'm anxious to hear what you all have to say. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Anything from you? Anything from you? No. All right. Well, that's going to bring us to the wonderful Dr. Desamore and her team. And I will take the mic over to her and let her take this away with the capital funding and project plan. And I'm sure that'll give us some time for questions. And then I believe she's also brought staff who will be attending our breakout sessions.
I did. Hi. Thank you so much. Hello, District Advisory Committee. Hope everyone is well this evening. I'm gonna grab the clicker.
Sure.
And then see if this works.
There you go. I can click it if you want.
Okay, that'll work out fine. All right, trying to get ourselves situated. Hello. My name is Amy Desamore. I'm the Chief Financial Officer here with the School District of Lee County, and I have with me as well today Mr. Dominic Gamelli, who is the Director of Planning, Growth, and School Capacity, and also have with us Mr. Scott Rickenbacker, who is our Director of Construction. And our goal today with this presentation is to give you some information, so at the end of that, you will know our different sources of capital funding, how they're used, and where you could go to find more information. Some of you may have heard some about this. We had a lot of discussion about this leading up to our sales tax conversations, but we have some updates for you today and some general information that we think will be helpful for everyone, because all of us within all of our schools are directly impacted by our capital funding and the projects that are going on. We good? Awesome, thank you. All right, that would help, wouldn't it? So we have several sources of capital funding, and we want to just talk about briefly about each one, kind of give you a little background on each. The main source of capital funding, and when I say capital funding, basically when the school district gets funding, that funding typically is for a very specific purpose or reason that is defined somewhere in state, local, or federal law. So for capital sources of funding, basically those are the sources of funding that by some rule, statute, or law says that we have to use those sources of funding for capital type purposes, or that is to build buildings, to maintain our buildings, something to basically maintain, construct the assets, the physical property of the school district. So that's what we're talking about in terms of capital. Our major source of capital funding is property tax revenues. So each of us, if you own a piece of property, you have received your tax bill, and on there are several different charges for the school district. Part of one of those charges for the school district goes directly to capital funding, or that is, it specifically says that we must use that amount of money specifically for capital purposes. At one point, our tax rate for property tax was $2, so for every $1,000 of taxable value someone had, $2 was charged. So you'll hear that be referred to as mills or millage. So at one point, it was 2 mills, or $2 per $1,000 worth of taxable value. Now that value is $1.50. So our property tax value, or property tax rate that we can charge for capital purposes is $1.50 per $1,000 of taxable value. Our tax roll, now that is and can be a volatile source of funding, because of course however much you get is dependent on what the value of the tax roll is. So as you all know, back in 2007 or 2008, our property tax roll was at a high. It was $96 billion our tax roll was worth in Lee County. And then once we hit the Great Recession, then we saw that amount basically decimate and tumble by over half. And so the amount of money that we were receiving in our capital funds went from a healthy amount to a very, very low amount. And then of course that means budget cuts. How are you going to get into the amount of funding that you're receiving based on what you got? So as you can see, this is our tax roll history. So as I referred to back in 2008, that was the high that we were. And then you saw how it dipped very, very low. And right now we are at about $90.8 billion for our tax roll. So close back to the levels that we were in 2008, but not quite there. And as you can see, that tax rate is the line that's represented on that graph, which is at $1.50, and that's where it's been for the past several years. And then you see in this graph the revenue then, or the money that was generated through those property tax rates. So from a high of over 180 million, and then you see how it dipped to a low of under 80 million in 2011. So that was a span of $100 million over that period of time that was gone and lost because of the dip in the tax roll. And now back in 2020, or this current fiscal year, we're estimating at almost 120 million. So those are the amounts of revenue that we receive from property tax revenues that's specifically dedicated to capital funding purposes. It's the major source of funding that we have in capital. The next source of funding that we have is impact fees. Many of you may have heard a lot of talk about impact fees. It is a political issue, and so there's been a lot of conversation over years related to impact fees. We first instituted an impact fee in Lee County in 2003, and there's been much conversation about it since then. The impact fee, for those of you who aren't familiar, is basically the amount of money that the county charges when someone builds a new residence within the county. So when you build a new residence, basically what the law says is, okay, well, building that new residence causes some impact of that growth to the community. And so one of the fees that's charged on the building of that home is an impact fee for schools, for roads, for fire. The impact fee specifically associated for the school district, our rate right now on a single family home, $5,484 on a single family home. And that's the impact fee that comes directly to the school district, and by the statute, or the local ordinance really, because the Board of County Commissioners levies the impact fee. By the ordinance, we can use those impact fees specifically for the building of new student stations. So the impact fee, the revenue that we get from that is going to be utilized to build new schools. We're either going to pay for a new school outright with those impact fees, or we're going to pay for the debt, the money that we had to borrow. We're going to cover the principal and interest payments on that debt to build the new school. So right now, with the impact fee, right now, even though the amount or the total amount for a single family home is $5,484, by action of the county commissioner, we collect less than half of that. The collection rate is 47.5% right now, based on the action of the county commission. So that's where we stand right now as far as impact fees. And when you see this graph, and I'm kind of building our different revenue sources here, you see the orange is the property tax revenue that we just talked about previously. Then the yellow that comes on top of that is the impact fee. So you see the amount of revenue we get from the impact fee and how it relates to the property tax revenue. Much, much smaller, because as I said, the tax roll, the property tax revenue by far is the biggest source of money that we have for capital. And then the impact fee, you see, adds that amount on there. We project to receive about $15 million in impact fees in the current fiscal year. Okay, so let's talk about the money. Both of those funding sources I just talked about, either property tax revenues or impact fees, both local sources. They come from right here, right? Because we're all paying those either by the homes that we're building here or either by the taxes that we're paying here. We also, at one point in time, got some capital revenue from the state. We received something called PICO, which was Public Education Capital Outlay. You may have heard of that. And that was money that the state gave us specifically for maintenance of our existing school buildings or for building new school buildings. And then we also at one point got Classrooms for Kids funding, and that was related to when the class size reduction amendment first came to pass. The state was giving additional money for those high growth school districts to build more schools because of the impact of the class size reduction amendment on current schools, because automatically that meant you couldn't have as many kids in the school based on the new amendment. So those were the funding sources that we used to receive from the state. However, as of this current year, we get zero funds as far as the state capital funding is concerned. So both of those sources of funding, basically for traditional schools, has been eliminated. We get no sources of capital funding from the state. So as we build on the graph, remember the orange is the property taxes, the yellow is the impact fee, and the blue is the state funding for capital. So back in 2007 and 2008, you can see that blue part of the graph was pretty substantial. We got a good amount of capital funding from the state, but then you see how it went down throughout the rest of the years, all the way to a very minimal amount in 2020. And as I said, that minimal amount that you see this year, it is not for traditional schools. We get a small amount of capital funding from the state, but that money is specifically designated for charter schools. So we funnel that money right to charter schools, but our traditional schools have no sources of state capital funding and have not for a couple years. All right, so, which brings us to our last and our most joyous. We've celebrated this, we're still celebrating it, our sales tax. As I'm sure you are aware, the voters approved our half-cent sales tax in November of 2018, and the collections for that began in January of 2019. So that was when the collections began. We've collected, so far, over $60 million, and we projected in, for a fiscal year projection, we projected that we would receive about $83 million in the fiscal year, that is July 2019 through June 2020, about $83 million for a fiscal year. Those collections of $60 million really reflect January through now. Okay, so difference between, you know, the fiscal year and just what we've collected so far since its inception. But $60 million so far, which we are eternally grateful for, and the focus of those sales tax funds are on maintenance, technology, security, and new construction. I'd like to, Dominic, if you would click into that link there with the Change for Change. I wanted to show everybody, if you hadn't seen it yet, we have a specific website specifically for sales tax. And so when you click on that Change for Change and you come down to the bottom of the page, you'll see a square there that says tracking your tax dollars. And when you click in there, basically that website shows you our collections, what our projection is for collections and what we've collected so far. And it shows you the planned projects, what category they're in. Is it new construction? Is it maintenance? Is it technology or safety? You can get a breakdown of each of those categories there. And also at the top of the page, you can even go through where you see, keep scrolling up, Dominic, at the very top where it says elementary schools, combination schools, middle schools. You can pull one of those drop-down menus down and look at a particular school and find out if there are any sales tax projects planned for that particular school in this year. Okay, so it is a really cool tool. We want to make sure that we publicize that because we want to be very transparent about exactly what's happening with the sales tax dollars. We want the community to celebrate with us about all the great things that are happening with sales tax dollars. So if you were not aware of this website or if you had not checked it out, I encourage you, please, when you have, you know, a few minutes, go in and just check it out. It'll give you some great information about the types of things that may be going on district-wide and the particular school that you're interested in. Thank you, sir. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's an overview of all our capital funds. So based on that overview, how are they used? So as we talked about a little bit earlier, capital is specifically designated for the assets of the district, building new schools, maintaining the buildings that we have, technology, I said maintenance, all of those things. So within the capital funds, we've got a 5-year capital plan, and because capital is a longer-term prospect, when we're talking about building schools and maintaining schools, we look at that on a 5-year and a 10-year basis. So the shortest period of time that we build the capital plan for is 5 years. We distribute a 5-year capital plan every year. We update that every year, and we add a 5th year onto it. So we will build that 5-year plan every year. And that 5-year capital plan is discussed at length with the school board during our budget process, and it's also on the budget website for everyone to check out in terms of seeing what projects are on there and how capital funds are used, because it is a substantial part of the budget. In general, in an overview of that this year, on our 5-year capital plan, we've got 5 schools planned in the next 5 years. We are growing in our district still at about 1.5% to 2% a year, which in easy numbers equates to about a school every year. And so that's what we've got in the plan. We've got an elementary, a middle, and a high school in the East Zone, which includes the Gateway High School that Ms. Fisher was just referring to. We've got one high school addition, that's Lehigh Senior Edition, that's already been completed, but that was on our 5-year capital plan for this year because we're still kind of, you know, paying for those expenditures. We've got an elementary and a middle school in the south, and then we've got 2 school rebuilds in the plan, one for Franklin Park and one for Cypress Middle. So those are the schools on the capital plan. And then as far as the sales tax projects are concerned, as I said, you could check out additional detail about those in the current fiscal year on the website, but they are specifically targeted for maintenance at our existing schools to catch up with the rotation that we fell behind on when our revenue sources fell so far, that, as you saw in the graph, educational technology, and safety projects. So all across, and safety is a big focus within our sales tax funds. When you go on the website, you will see just a general category called safety, and we'll give a dollar amount on there, but we give no other detailed information about what those projects are for, obvious reasons. They're safety, and we don't want to, advertise exactly what's happening, but you'll see the general category on there and know it's a really big focus in terms of what's going on with our sales tax dollars. Other stuff that happens in the capital plan over the 5-year span, we've got debt service, or that is we're paying the mortgage payment of the district, right? So all of the schools that we've built over time, $244 million over the 5-year span, right? So it's between 45 and 50 million a year that we're paying in principal and interest payments for schools that have been previously built, is built into the capital funds. And that's one of the big things that we use impact fees for, is paying the debt on those new schools that we purchased, that we built over time. Major maintenance, repairs, and renovations all over the district at $182 million over the 5 years. You see what we have for equipment and buses, and also technology projects as we continue to implement that really cool technology that kids are loving, and that teachers are utilizing as different teaching tools to be able to differentiate instruction. $114 million over 5 years within the capital plan. And we have, as I said, in our budget book on our website, and we can refer you to that in a little bit, we have the detailed capital plan within that budget book, so that within the 5 years you can see exactly how those different categories and projects break down over time, over the 5 years. So now I'm going to turn it over to my esteemed colleague, Mr. Gamelli, who is going to talk about some of the specific capital projects that we have going on right now.
Good evening, everyone. So Dr. Desamore's talked about where we get our capital funding and how we use it and how it's laid out in our annual, I'm sorry, what is that, Dr. Desamore's?
Our 5-year plan?
Our 5-year capital plan.
5-year capital plan, yep.
There you go. So these are just some of the projects that we have going on. Here's an example of the elementary, middles, and high schools that we have some centralized energy plant, or HVAC, improvements, replacements going on at. As you can see, 2 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, 3 high schools, and one of our technical colleges. We have some fire upgrades at Cape Coral Tech College also there, with a new sprinkler upgrades, a new fire pump at Dunbar High School, and fire sprinkler repairs at Dunbar Middle School. New construction projects, Gateway High School, everyone's very familiar with that now. The tilt wall construction is going on, and the first week of February you're going to see those walls be lifted up as you drive down State Road 82. Some of the ball fields are done, as well as all the drainage is already in place. The new middle school MM, which is in the East Zone in Lehigh Acres. Last night was the GMP, or guaranteed max pricing, was approved by the board. We'll be moving forward. That has a scheduled opening of August of 2021. Renovation projects that are underway. Transportation East at Buckingham has a project. Lehigh Senior High School, we're just now closing out that addition that Dr. Desamore spoke about. And James Stevens is going to have 2 of its buildings remodeled into a pre-K center. Heights Elementary just got a new ADA compliant playground that's about 95% complete. We have several roofing projects going on at 4 of our elementary schools, 2 of our high schools that are in the RFQ, which is a request for a quote, and 1 at the Public Service Academy in Fort Myers. Portable projects, and these are canopy projects covering our portables from where the portables are located on the campus and connected to the main buildings. So we've taken 6 of our, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of our schools, or 5 of our schools, I should say, and have almost completed most of that work. We are actually going to choose another 5 schools and continue on this. We do have a policy which is SRF from the Department of Education, that after these portables have been out for 3 years, we have to cover them and have the walks for the students to have travel from the main school to and fro the portables. And we also have the portable staging about ready to be set up at Lehigh Acres High School for Gateway High School's 9th grade that'll be staging there, about 420 to 450 students. Our proximity plan, we've made, I'm sure that some of you have heard about this, we made some short-term improvements by reducing some of our outlier schools so that our students that are not attending a school that might be the furthest from where they live. We've made some of those changes already this year. We'll continue to make some of those changes as we move towards our proximity elementary program that will actually start in August of 2022. Last night, Davis Demographics was selected as our consultant by the board, and we'll have them on board hopefully by the end of this month, and we'll start putting that plan together over the next 18 months so that it's ready to go in August of 22. We have a piece of property that we sold, Palomino Lane, for $7,250,000. Our appraisal amounts, that was actually ratified in December. I apologize if that date is incorrect. The possible earliest closing would be April of this year, but it could happen at any time after that. We have some traffic improvement projects at 6 different schools, and what those are is that's getting traffic off of the main thoroughfares, the main roads, either onto turn lanes or onto our school property in order to not be blocking traffic in the roadways. So we have 6 schools that were identified that are in the process of having some corrections made to get traffic off of the main roads. Some miscellaneous projects on intercom systems at about 14, 15 schools there that are being upgraded. Electrical projects at another 15 to 17 schools there, a window project at Lehigh Senior High School and Fort Myers High School. And that's our capital projects at the moment. Any questions?
Oh, question. Yes, ma'am.
That was in the works on involving Williams Road and maybe in conjunction with the Estero Village. I was just curious if that was not included for a specific reason, or maybe it's further down the line or something like that.
Are we talking about the Williams Road improvements by the Village of Estero?
I didn't know if they were specifically only by the village, so the district isn't connected into that.
Well, the Village of Estero is widening and creating bike lanes and walk lanes on both sides of Williams Road in front of a school. So they're relocating a lot of utilities. Our force main is being relocated by Bonita Springs Utilities.
Okay, but I guess I might have misunderstood it. Some of our SAC meetings and previous discussion, I thought that they were actually making some improvement to the roadway, kind of what you said, getting in order to add a turn lane so that the traffic wouldn't back up as much on that road during dismissal. But maybe I was incorrect in understanding that was being worked on.
Let me ask Scott if he might be able to clarify that. Do you know if there's any, I know the road improvements are adds a turn lane, but do you know of anything else beyond there?
Village in terms of the development of the new elementary middle school there. Some of the interior design roads coming from other areas of that parcel are going to be discussed and implemented in the ultimate project design.
It could be city or county? City or county, maybe? No.
Okay. Okay. And so we could definitely look and dig to find out some more information about it and make sure to get it to Erica and Dr. Spiro to get some additional information once we find it. And I wanted to bring up a point that Ms. Fisher pointed out, so thank you, Ms. Fisher. She wanted to come back to this graph and point out that there was a couple things going on during this time period. There's a particular graphic that we have to show this that's not in this particular presentation today, but one of the things that really brought to bear the pressure of that really, I guess, intensified the effects of the lack of funding that we had was during this time span, as you see, the drastic drop between 27 and then 2013, and even as it's coming up through 2020, even as that revenue is increasing a little, even though not nearly to the point where we were back in 2007, during the same time period, between now currently and back in 2007, in that same time span, we've grown over 17,000 students. So while you're having that revenue come down, you're having the impact of not only staying static, but having to service and make sure to provide facilities and maintenance and the educational facilities for that many more students, which exacerbated the problem even more. So thank you, Ms. Fisher, for making sure that we pointed that out. Yes, ma'am, you have one more question. Okay. Yeah, that's essentially what that means. So during the process with conversations with the county commission, because the county commission really ultimately levies the impact fee. It's a local county ordinance, and the county commissioners have the opportunity to either approve that or not. And some of the conversation that was going on at the time during this time of the Great Recession is the county commission argued that our impact fee might have been a hamper to economic growth. In other words, if we didn't have the impact fee, maybe we would have more people building, maybe our economy would rebound faster without an impact fee or with a reduced impact fee. So back during those years, and let me go back to that slide to make sure that I call out the right years, in 2013, that impact fee was reduced to 20%. So in other words, whatever the collection rate was in that year, and we do a new impact fee study every 5 years, so it's probably a little bit different, but theoretically, that $5,484, we were only collecting 20% of that based on what the county said that they wanted to levy, trying to spur economic development, you know, as was their vote. And so throughout the next few years, they increased the collection rate, but we are still at 47.5. So meaning of that 5,400, yes, we are only collecting less than half of that based on the county commission's vote. So we continue to talk to them to try to, because impact fees are an important part of our capital funding, just like everything else. And so we continue conversations with them to try to, you know, maximize that funding source. But at this point in time, that's where we are. Great question. Thank you for that.
And let me just add one more comment about the Estero with Williams Road. When we develop the middle school and the elementary school, it's actually on the back of the property. It will have an infrastructure of road work that will help to draw traffic off of Williams Road.
Very good. Well, that being said, we look forward to joining you in the breakout sessions to have some additional conversation. And thank you for having us.
So it looks like this portion of our meeting went a little quicker than might have been anticipated. So I'm going to suggest that what we do is that we come back we go to our breakout sessions now and come back at 7:15, and then perhaps we'll all go home early tonight. Okay? So any objections to an executive decision by fee out there? Looks like we're unanimous, so why don't everybody go to their breakout sessions, and the rooms are listed on the agenda. Elementary will be in the curriculum resource room, middle will be in training room A, and high school in training room B. And I'll see everybody back at 7:15. Evening. Looks like we have everybody back from our breakout sessions, and we are going to start with our high school breakout reports. Elementary breakout reports. I don't know why I did that. Elementary breakout reports.
Elementary will be expecting some follow-up information on locations of new elementary schools in East and South Zone and a new middle school in the South Zone. We're also requested some information on, can the county please look into green energy and green construction going forward? We had a lot of discussion about the constant and ongoing inefficiency of portables and how they are no longer temporary solutions. They are like 12-year solutions and don't appear to be on the list for the Change for Change. And we also have requested nutrition presentation and an updated safety and security presentation.
I know that nutrition is on our list for this year. I don't remember off the top of my head where it is, but I know it is up and coming. And then we'll move to middle schools.
Thank you very much. Good evening. We had quite a good discussion on several topics in middle school, as usual. The first was regarding how these projects are chosen, and essentially it boiled down to submissions from schools and the true need. Security is the top concern, and that they're being evaluated on an ongoing basis, and it's also combined with trying to reduce our school choice zones. We then did move to more of a non-agenda topics and really spend a lot of time on mental health issues, particularly the legislation that was discussed in our last meeting. That mental health issues and how they're going to be treated, I suppose, are going to be decided on a case-by-case basis from each school. So it's not going to be one specific way across the board for everybody. And that there are platforms for educators and administrators at each school so that they can come together and share best practices and learn on an ongoing basis, so that they can not only you can discuss it with each other, but then you can take it back to your schools and help to educate your fellow teachers and administrators. And right now, especially at the middle school level, anxiety is really a top concern. And so this is something that is going to make or break the school experience for many children. So then that there was a need for groups and staffs who are going to reach out and help children. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and that takes us to high school.
Hello, do I have to state my name? I'm Amy McWilliam. Yes, I will. We talked about how proximity busing might affect capital building projects, especially for high schoolers with different academies within those schools. And, you know, the dream is that there are similar types of academies replicated throughout each zone so that students had access close by to a school that might have something for them. We did get a little off topic. We were talking about free school free and reduced lunches and all sorts of things. But that's really the brunt of it. We were also talking about how it's important to include staff and faculty in some of these bigger projects with new schools coming up, because they have a lot of insight about maybe traffic issues. And we were assured that in the case of Estero, the middle school and elementary school, not only is it faculty that are involved and parents and other people, but the community is, and actually the city is very involved, or the village of Estero rather. So there are a lot of players and stakeholders in all of these projects, not just the school district. And that really was the brunt of it. So there you go.
Thank you. That takes us to public comment from any non-DAC members on non-agenda items. Seeing none, that'll move us to good of the order. I'll briefly tell you that this morning, as your chairperson, I attended a meeting with the other chairpersons of a number of the various district committees, with the superintendent and some of his staff. One thing that was interesting, I know a topic that constantly bubbles up here from our different breakout sessions is concern over the quality and quantity of communication that parents and community members receive from our individual schools as opposed to from the district. It was mentioned by some of the other committees, and I brought it to the superintendent's attention that we seem to have some schools that do it really well, and we seem to have some schools that do not. And that dovetailed very nicely with some other topics they were talking about, and the superintendent started talking, along with Dr. Siro, about our lead principal program and how they're going to work to further identify either the lead principals or principals at schools where they're doing things like this really well, and try to do a better job of helping them be models for the other schools so that other principals can learn from them, because it seems that we've got some bright spots, and we don't seem to be taking as much advantage of that on a district level as we could to replicate what we're doing well. And so that was a commitment that Dr. Atkins made and tasked Dr. Spiro with working on to try to make sure we spread some of that wealth. So I thought that was very interesting to hear that and to hear what they were doing to respond so that we continue to see progress. Does anybody else have any other comments they'd like to make for the good of the order? Seeing none, I will tell you that our next meeting is February 19th, and I would happily entertain a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Alexa Donnelly. All those in favor? Have a wonderful evening, everyone.